Alright, so this video is about triangle congruence proofs. And we're given that AC bisects segment angle BAD and segment AB is congruent to segment AD. So they told me that AC bisects angle BAD. Alright, by definition of a bisector, these two have to be congruent. Because that's what bisectors do, angle bisectors do. It splits into two equal angles. So that's by definition of an angle bisector. We also know that, let's get rid of that. So I know that this angle is congruent to that angle. I'm going to call it 1 and angle 2. We also know that AB is congruent to AD. So this segment is congruent to that segment. So after you plug in all the given information into the proof, into the picture, we can begin trying to prove it. Alright, so the first thing I plug in is my given information. From there, I know that this segment is congruent to itself by reflexive property. So let's write it in our proof. I can say that AC is congruent to segment AC, and the reason being is reflexive property. If you notice, you can probably see that I have a side, an angle, and a side congruent to a side, an angle, and a side. So I know the two triangles are congruent by SAS. The only thing is though, they never told me that angle 1 and angle 2 are congruent. I knew that because it said that AC was a bisector. That's the only reason I knew they're congruent. So I have to add it to my proof. So I'm going to now say that angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. And the reason why they were congruent was because the definition of an angle bisector. Alright, now that I know the angle 1 and 2, now that I justify why angles 1 and 2 are congruent, and I knew this was congruent to this one, and I knew that was congruent by reflexive property, I can now say side angle side. So my final step is to say triangle ABC is congruent to triangle ADC. And the reason why we can justify that is due to side, angle, side. Alright, that was pretty good. With that said, let's try another one. So let's write it. I can now say triangle ABC is congruent to triangle ADC. And the reason is side, angle, side. And we've just proved it. Alright, let's give it another one. And I'll copy that as a note. I'm about to change the screen. Alright, we got a new one. It says given C is the midpoint of BD, AB is perpendicular to BD, and BD is perpendicular to DE. Prove those two triangles are congruent. Let's plug in information they gave. First by saying C is a midpoint. By saying that C is a midpoint of BD, I know this segment has to be congruent to that segment by definition of a midpoint. And for that matter, I know that this angle is 90 degrees and this angle is 90 degrees. And I know that reason because they said that AB is perpendicular to BD. And they also said that BD is perpendicular to DE. So I know those two parts are true. Going from there, I gotta see this. These angles have to be congruent. Alright, so I know enough information to prove it. These two triangles are congruent by angle, side, angle. We have a 90-degree angle, a side included, and another angle, congruent to an angle, a side, and an angle. So it's ASA. So let's write the proof. Alright, so we wrote down our given information. The information that we figured out using our given information was that BD was congruent to CD. And the reason why we said that was it was given that C was a midpoint. So I can say that BD is congruent to CD, and that reason is definition of a midpoint. Definition of a midpoint. All right. After that, I concluded I'm going to call this angle 1 and angle 2. I concluded that angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. And the reason why they're congruent is because vertical angles are congruent. So once you prove all those things, as in this segment is congruent to that segment, and this angle is congruent to that angle, the last thing I added to my picture was this was a right angle, this was a right angle. The reason why I said they were right angles, the perpendicular lines make right angles. So I'm going to say angle B and angle D are right angles. And the reason for that is perpendicular lines form right angles. And so my final step would be saying that we wanted to prove these two triangles are congruent. So triangle ABC is congruent to triangle EDC. So E. And the reason why we said so was angle side angle. So we just proved those two triangles are congruent. All right, let's do another one. I'll copy that as a note. Let's try another. All right, so we got another picture. In this picture, they told me that BC is congruent to DA. Let's show that. BC, DA are congruent. They also said that AC bisects angle BAD. So here's segment AC. There's angle, BCD. So BCD is here. Because it's a bisector, it makes these two angles congruent to each other by definition of a bisector. Call that angle 1, angle 2. All right. Now, I also know that this side is congruent to itself by reflexive property. So I know the two triangles are congruent because a side, angle, side, congruent to a side, an angle, and a side. So I know they're congruent. All right. So all the things we knew were, the things we knew without them telling us was that angle 1, make it look better. Angle 1 was congruent to angle 2. They didn't tell us, but we knew that because we knew that was a segment bisector. So we can now say that angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. And the reason for that is definition of an angle bisector. So definition of an angle bisector. Another thing that I knew without them telling us was the AC was congruent to itself. So let's say that in our proof. AC is congruent to segment AC. And the reason for that is reflexive property. After I accounted for all that, I could then say that the triangle ABC was congruent to triangle CDA. And the reason for that was side, angle, side. Postulate. So, we proved it. All right, I'll get that as a note. Let's do another. All right, so let's start this one. They said given C is a midpoint of both BD and AE. If they gave me that, I'm going to plug that immediately into my picture. It says C is a midpoint of BD, so these two parts are congruent. It's also a midpoint of AE, so these two parts are congruent. And that's a lot of information because I also know that these two angles are congruent, called angle 1 and angle 2, because of vertical angles. So with that information, I know these two triangles are congruent by side, angle, side. Now, let's write it in the proof. All right, so that's what was given. the first thing we could assume, or we can prove, or know, that they didn't give us exactly, was that this segment was congruent to this segment, and this segment was congruent to this segment. And they didn't tell us that, but they told us it was a midpoint. So I can say that segment DC is congruent to segment CB, and for that matter, segment AC is congruent to segment CE. And that reason would be definition of a midpoint. And from there, I knew that these angles were congruent. So I can say that angle 1 is congruent to angle 2, and the reason why was vertical angles are congruent. And my final step, I now can say the triangle ABC is congruent to triangle EDC, and the reason would be because of side, angle, side. All right, let's do a couple more and then that's it. Okay, so this is from Regents exam. It's like a standardized test. So in this information, they said in the diagram, triangle ABC and DEF below, AB is congruent to DE. Once they tell you things like that, you should write it into the picture. So I'm going to show that AB is congruent to DE. If you're working on the screen or whatever, you want to draw the picture on your page so you can actually write into the picture. And you can better see what's happening for side, angle, side, and so forth. So that's given. Then it said angle A is congruent to angle D. So I can put a mark there to show that they're congruent. They also said that angle B is congruent to angle E. So here's angle B, and here's angle E. Given that, we can clearly see there's angle, side, angle, congruent to an angle, side, angle. So I know it's A, S, A. And the answer choice will be here. Answer choice 3. Without drawing into the picture, it's very hard to see what's what. So you should draw it into the picture. And if you don't have a picture you can write on, because you're doing it on the screen, you should draw the picture on your page. Let's do one more of those. In the company diagram of these triangles, triangle BAT and triangle FLU, let's say angle B is congruent to angle F. So let's draw that right away. Angle B is congruent to angle F. Then it said BA is congruent to FL. Here's BA. Here is FL. And that's all they gave us. It said, for the question, which statement is needed to prove triangle BAT is congruent to triangle FLU? They didn't give me anything to go by. Like, they didn't tell me to prove by side angle side or side side angle. So I can prove any direction, any way I want. So let's look. The first question says, or the first answer choice says, angle A has been congruent to angle L. So let's check. If angle A was indeed congruent to angle L, it would be angle side angle happening, right? I see angle side angle, and I see an angle side angle. Let's make sure A is supposed to equal L, though. In the picture, in the triangle BAT, A comes second, L comes second. So they're supposed to be equal. And if they were equal, you could say angle side angle. So I know that's true. Let's check the others, though, just to make sure. So looking at the others and ignoring what we said about B and L, the next thing they said was, suppose, it says suppose that segment AT was congruent to segment LU. The segment AT was congruent to segment LU. If it was, you would have side side angle congruent to side side angle. SSA. Now we've already decided this is not a congruence postulate. So it could not be this answer choice. Let's look at the next one. All right, so from there, they said that angle A and angle U would be congruent. So here's angle A, here's angle U. Now I'm going to give it two curves. They both are at the top of a triangle, but angle A is not supposed to be congruent to angle U. Angle A is supposed to be congruent to angle L, or else they miswrote the triangle, which they wouldn't have done. So angle A could not be congruent to angle U, given and prove it being congruent, given the fact they wrote it in a different way. All right, let's try the last one. In the last one, it said the BA is parallel to LF. So BA is parallel to LF. Even though that's nice, we have no transversal to connect the two. I have to create a transversal, and it doesn't connect the triangles at all. It doesn't help us prove anything. Made that transversal there, I can prove that these two angles are congruent, but nothing else. There's nothing else really useful. So this is no good. It doesn't lead us any place. So only answer choice will be answer choice A. All right, that's all I have. Good luck.